SSR. Oh, should I reroll for King or should I reroll for Samir? Hey, yo, my guys, I pulled 3 SSRs. Is this a good reroll? Should I reroll again? My guys, it's finally time to talk about this almost cringy topic. Tier list, and it's not going to be like a definitive tier list. I'll show you what I have now. It's going to change as I actually walk through this guy. And so today, not only are we going to be talking about a tier list for the current situation, but we're going to also talk about a tier list for the future situation, the future-proof tier list. Hi. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Lace, and this is a Tower of Fantasy video. As I already said, we're going to be jumping into 2 different tier lists because the future actually looks quite different to what the current circumstances are. And so let's kick things off with the current state of the game. We've got, this is kind of like the loose tier list I've come up with. There is a lot of reasons as to why this is here, and why this crow could be an A, could be an S, or could be the B. And so let's start talking through them. However, I want to get these guys out of the way first. You can see NA, B-, she is above the rest of the SRs. The SRs, generally speaking, they don't scale overly well into the late game, but they are definitely serviceable. For Hilda and Echo, I'm not going to talk too much about them, aside from the fact that, first of all, I hate the spear so much. It's so freaking trash to use, giga clunky, and just doesn't do too well. And as for Hilda, her weapon is, I don't know, it's like compared to the rest, it's kind of really strange. I'm not really like into it. And so for the intents and purposes of this video, I'm going to leave her at a D. However, if you guys do know how to use Hilda, do let me know in the comments. Coming up over here, I have Biling and then Pepper. I actually think Biling is quite good because just from the point of view of like a standalone unit, you don't have any synergies or anything. Physical attacker, bow unit, she can actually hit airborne units unlike another, a certain S tier unit. I think Biling is definitely more than serviceable. It's just a shame that NA is actually so good. And then going over to Pepper. Pepper is definitely not bad at all. She has the healing. She can actually get you into places where you shouldn't be by healing through the damage. But to be honest, like that utility is going to be fading away in a couple more days, so you don't really have to worry about that. And generally speaking, especially at this point in the game, healers, you'd probably rather not. And that's part of the reason why I might do something like that. Although that will probably trigger a lot of Coco fans, I'm going to put that right back to the B. And so next we have NA. And so NA is actually incredible for an SI unit. She has the CC, she has the big damage, she has the shield breaking. There's not very much that she can't do. However, the only reason why she isn't higher is because there are actually quite a lot of other ice attackers. For example, Meryl, NA, like they're kind of the same role. All right, and so that's essentially all of the SRs done. Now, let's talk about these guys over here. I'm going to go from top to bottom, starting off with Nemesis. Now, Nemesis, I think, is almost like in a class of her own. Honestly, I should probably put her in S+. There, that looks a lot more fair. Okay, now, why exactly is Nemesis so freaking good? We'll have to explore her in this wiki page. Now, one of the main contributing factors is the fact that she has the Vault Resonance. Any of these characters that has this Vault Resonance or the Flame Resonance or the Ice Resonance or whatever, they are by default essentially required for that team. And so on the CN launch, this Vault Resonance thing did not exist. However, in exchange for this Vault Resonance, she actually got a giga nerf. So as you can see, 389% attack down to 205. But to be honest, Venus, aka your Nemesis, she isn't exactly who you want to be in most of the time. You do want to stay in the DPS most of the time, and so therefore, it's kind of okay if she gets like a DPS hit, as long as she is just like existing, because she is giving everybody 15% attack and the Vault Resistance. On top of that, the fact that she is a support is incredible because in most games, DPSs, they're everywhere. Everybody has a DPS, and DPSs, generally speaking, do get power crept faster. She is a support, and so I do think that her long-term viability is going to be quite long term. And so in the realm of support, you can see that she actually does a lot of healing. If you do get her on the C1, she gets even more healing. It's going to be freaking sick. I wish I had Nemesis. I just didn't reroll because I couldn't give a shit anymore. And so it's for all of these reasons, and in particular, the Vault Resonance, as well as her long-term viability, that I have placed her at an S+. Now, next we have Samir, and Samir is just a freaking powerhouse, right? She just does so much incredible damage, and that is essentially her TLDR. As you can tell, she does not have very much shatter, but she does have a decent amount of charge. And so what that means is that if you do run Samir, you do have to run somebody else with the shatter. It could be King, it could be Meryl, it could be Huma, it could be literally anyone. Just find some shatter somewhere. And so from the perspective of her ratios in terms of like simulations of her damage, she actually does come out on top. And with her first star, she actually gets even more cracked, where she, upon dealing a critical hit, she deals extra damage. And this cooldown is 0.5 seconds, which is absolutely nuts. So technically speaking, she could be like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa," and then everyone could be like, bzz, 0.5 seconds, bzz, 0.5 seconds, and you get the point. Essentially, at this point in the game, she is the premier DPS. That is the TLDR for her. Next, we've got King over here, and King is a fantastic shatterer. As you can tell, if you pair King with the Samir, you've pretty much got the perfect reroll. However, the thing about King is that not only is he a shield breaker, he is also a pretty decent DPS, because increased shatter by X amount after shattering the target's shield, you deal even more damage to them every second. That's dot damage. That's very nice. And to be honest, I think everybody has praised Samir and King enough that I can actually probably skip through. But TLDR, if you didn't know, is that he is a fantastic shield breaker. He is going to carry you through a lot of content, and he's using a scythe, which is freaking sick. He does have another incredible breakpoint at 5 stars, and you know, it's weird that I'm talking about 5 stars, but trust me, as the time goes on, as we play more and more, we will be getting advancements on these guys, and these stars become very, very significant moving into the long-term end game. And so yeah, again, 5-star, a fantastic breakpoint, increases damage dealt against HP shields or shielded enemies by 100%. You're doubling your damage. All right, and so with all of that in mind, I would say King is an S tier. I think he does belong there. Now, this one may be a little bit contentious, where I put Meryl into S tier as well, saying that she is as good as Samir and King. I really do think so. So the thing about Meryl is that she is also a fantastic shattering unit. However, on top of that, she is also going to get even more fantastic as she gets her 1 star, which again is pretty achievable for most people as time goes on. And so to be honest, this is pretty much like where I would say her best breakpoint is. After that, you know, this is all nice to haves, but really what you want is this guy over here. Increase shatter by 15% and restores 10% of HP after shattering the target's shield. Now with that, as well as her skills and her abilities, these guys down here, she, I believe, does come out as the most efficient shatterer. And there is one last thing that I do want to show you guys, and it's this guy over here. Frost Barrier, where she removes all debuffs from the wielder, and then she also creates a barrier which will reduce their speed, stops them from dodging or jumping, and you can imagine where this could be good. I personally think that Meryl is actually a hidden gem. I think that she is kind of being underrated right now, because most people are tunnel visioning on like the highest DPS, and that's kind of it. They're not valuing utility like that, or like knockbacks, etc, etc. All right, so after Meryl, I've got Tsubasa down here. Now, Tsubasa is actually fantastic because first of all, she's a bow unit. You know, traditionally, I like guns as well. I really would like the Samir, but the bows actually hit airborne units, so yeah. However, at this moment, we are talking about Tsubasa. So Tsubasa over here, you can see she's a DPS ice element. She has, I believe, at this point in time, the best charge in the game. So what that means is that, I actually didn't explain this, but essentially she charges up the skills the fastest when she does her normals, etc, etc. So generally speaking, at C0, at 0 stars, she doesn't do anything but DPS, right? She just does normal things like a DPS does. However, at C1, at 1 star, she gets an all global attack buff for everybody. So what that means is that she can actually stack up 3 times with this skill over here. It does consume your dodge, but it gives you essentially a 15% attack buff for 15 seconds. And this guy refreshes. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to shoot 1 arrow, 2 arrow, 3 arrow, and they're not on individual timers. It's that when you stack up to 15, it starts from there. 15% damage, 15 seconds from now. And so if that was on C0, I reckon she would be like at an S+ tier, because she is essentially supporting everybody. She would be able to fit into any team because she can give everybody a global 15% damage buff. And so yeah, that's where the first morph is. I would say if she had C1, Tsubasa 100% would be in the S+. But the reality is that she isn't, and so therefore she is an A. At C0, she is an A. King, Meryl, Samir, Nemesis, all of them are extremely useful at C0. Tsubasa, a little bit less so. And so with that, we're going to come down to the B tier. Now, these are not bad units. I run Huma, I run Tsubasa. I don't have any of these top tier units. It's just that these characters, they are unfortunately like a step above the rest of them. It's not like these are bad, it's just that they're really freaking good. And so let's start things off with Crow over here. Now, Crow essentially is competing with Samir because they are occupying a DPS slot, right? And Samir is better than Crow. Therefore, Crow is in B. That's essentially the logic. Now, it's not really fair to say that because Crow actually has incredible air attack damage. And if you are able to push him to like 3 stars or 5 stars, then Crow actually could be fantastic. I mean, he actually is fantastic. It's just that, especially at the start of the game, Samir is very, very strong, C0, and at C1. Crow, I'm telling you, you need like constellation 3 or 5, like 3 or 5 stars. That's kind of cringe. And so it's for that reason, that high investment reason, that I would say he is in the B. Huma is very, very interesting. Like I said, she was my pity. Now, in the context of PvE, in the context of clearing content, I would say she's, you know, a B hovering an A because she is a shield user. She, for most people, is going to feel really, really clunky. And that is the primary reason as to why I put her into a B. However, in the context of PvP, I can see her going up to S tier. I can see her really, really making people mold with her stun, and she has the flexibility of damage mitigation versus damage. So if you guys didn't know, yes, Huma uses a shield, but did I tell you that this shield actually turns into a freaking axe? And if you're able to get the C1, the 1 star, you're gonna get even more damage reduction as well as more damage from the respective forms. Now, there is one other thing that I didn't talk about, which is the shatter and the charge. She is a fantastic generalist, okay? And my guys, I promise you, this is not me coping with my Huma pity. I really do think it's gonna take PvP for people to realize how strong she actually is. However, especially for general content, she is most certainly a B. And in playability as well. Next, we've got your boy Zero. Now, Zero, a lot of people love to shit on the man. And I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because like the only thought in my head is that Zero is only good for honey farming. It's not true. It's not true. And so the guy is a support. He is a flame support. He has a high charge as well, but you really don't want to be spending a lot of time in Zero because he's a support, right? You want to be spending time in your DPS character. And so therefore this charge is kind of like null and void. On top of that, unfortunately, he doesn't have the flame resonance thing that Nemesis has, where she has like the volt resonance. And so it's for these reasons where he doesn't really stand out. He doesn't really do that much DPS, and any healing that he does, you're not really looking for a healer. You're looking for more damage, right? And so the C1 is kind of like, because I know people will argue with me about the C1. It's good. It's good. Like I said, it's good, but it's not better than the rest. You know what I mean? That is going to bring us to the next character, Shiro. So Shiro is an interesting one where she's kind of like a shattering character, a shield breaker kind of thing. However, her shatter is remarkably low. And it's really a shame because she's using the whole chakram thing and she got a big booty, but essentially she is really only viable from like a really competitive meta point of view at 3 stars onwards, because this guy is actually a real fat juicer. Increases shatter by 15% and resets all weapon skill cooldowns. But 3 stars, that is a freaking steep investment. We're probably not going to see that until maybe like potentially 6-12 months down. At 6 stars, she also has a fantastic breakpoint where she gets 100% crit chance for the next 8 seconds, but you can't really rely on something with such a high investment, right? And so it's for these reasons that I would say that Shiro is unfortunately at a B. Everybody, again, these guys are just unfortunately a cut above her. All right, and so lastly, we have Coco Ritter. Now, she's an interesting one because she is a fantastic healer. That's a pretty good charge. However, again, healing, I'd rather be doing damage, you know? And so let me put it this way. If you need healing, if you actually do require that nice looking circle, then I would say she's probably an S, right? Because she is actually the best at her job. There is no better. And the reason she's so good at healing is because she's not like Meryl. Oh, shatter someone, get some 10% HP. Not like Zero. Like just do a little bit of healing on the C1. She is actually a full-blown healer. Because at C1, after dodging, she is going to summon a healing bee, which essentially heals you. And then if I come down to her skill, she creates a freaking healing zone around herself. And you can run around with this guy and heal people. So, you know, if people are being dumb, you can go be dumb with them. Generally speaking, Coco's utility, it really maxes out at 1 star. Everything else is, you know, it's kind of nice, but 1 star is really the juicer. But again, generally speaking, if you can dodge, if you can play better, then Coco is gonna be down over here. There are certainly places where we must have healers, like the raids. I think we have like 2 tanks, 2 healers, and some other X amount of DPSs. For that reason, Coco is at S. But for general content, generally speaking, she is more at a B. And so my guys, with that, you should have a pretty good understanding of each of the characters' kits and why exactly they sit in here. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is this guy here. And to understand this, we really need to understand this one over here. And so shout out to your boy Citus Choco from the Ida Cafe. But essentially, this is what the future looks like. For those of you who've played like Punishing Grey Raven or some of like the element-based comps, even like actually most gachas, this will be quite familiar because essentially we have 3 slots, right? 3 characters. The first slot is going to be your core weapon with the elemental resonance passive, which is the must-have. That is why Nemesis is non-negotiable. There is no other unit that has this vault resonance over here. In the second slot, we have a DPS weapon of the same element as the core. So as you can see, for example, let's take Vault. We have the Nemesis weapon over here, and then we have the Samir dual guns or the Crow daggers. Unfortunately, this one is just not available to us because it's going to come down in a later patch, but that is going to be the BIS in the future. So what that means is that a DPS, like I said, a DPS is going to overtake another DPS. Samir is going to get outclassed in the future. And so it's with rationale like this, who is going to get outclassed, who is not going to get outclassed, who is actually going to remain in meta, that has actually formed this tier list over here. But I haven't finished this guide. Let's keep talking through it. Slot 3. Slot 3, generally speaking, is the support weapon that provides buff and additional background damage. Now, if you think about it, there is no mention of healing anywhere, right? And so that is why I would rate Coco as kind of like down there, and why like the healers are kind of, they don't really exist in my head. And so with all of this in mind, I'm gonna come back over here and explain each of these. Vault Resonance, I don't know how many times I've said it in this video already, but that is like the prime reason that she is there. And that is also gonna be the prime reason as to why Claudia and Cobalt are gonna be here too. Because where Nemesis has the Vault Resonance, Claudia has the Physical Resonance, and Cobalt has the Fire Resonance. Now, Cobalt is actually able to double up as the damage dealer for fire, because with the confirmation of Nemesis actually having this Vault Resonance, I can come back over and have a look at Cobalt B and look at this Flame Resonance, and I'm like, okay, I can actually believe that this is going to be in the game. Cobalt is going to be a juicer. She is going to be a core in the fire team. Now, if I come back over to this thing, you'll see this snitch looking thing, and this snitch looking thing is actually one of the other characters unreleased. I believe it's Lyra over here. Nope, it is not. It is actually Ruby over here. So coming down, you can see Flame Resonance. She is going to be giving more. Increased flame attack by 20% and flame resistance by 40%. I don't know if this is what we're going to get Ruby as when she comes out in Global. I think that there is a chance, a pretty good chance, that Ruby is going to be changed. Maybe she's going to get a nerf down to 15% for flame attack and like 25% flame resistance, in line with Cobalt B. And so yeah, if I'm rating Nemesis so freaking highly, then Cobalt B technically should also be at the S+, considering she has essentially the equivalent buff, except it's full of flame instead. Now here's where the conditionals begin again. If Ruby releases and she has the same flame resonances, this means that Cobalt B and Ruby could actually be fighting for the same spot. And so what that means is that Cobalt could actually be an S. Otherwise, if Ruby is actually nerfed, she doesn't have this, or this is changed to something else maybe, then Cobalt would actually go to S+, because she is the sole unit with the flame resonance. I doubt that scenario, and so that is why I'm leaving her at an S. And so the same thing applies for Claudia, where Claudia is essentially the same thing as Cobalt, but she is for the physical. Now, I showed you before, Lyra is actually physical. She is going to be giving the physical resonance, 20% attack, 40% resist. Claudia is going to have the nerfed version, where it's 15% attack, 25% physical resist. Now, the thing about Claudia is that she was actually good before this. And the reason is, if I come back over to this one over here, you can see Claudia, 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 and Claudia. And it's because of her C1. Her C1 is another stacking bonus. So if you guys remember back to Tsubasa, she had like a 15% damage buff for everybody. Claudia has essentially the same thing, except it's 8% and it stacks 3 times. That's 24% for 25 seconds. That's honestly pretty incredible. And so if you were able to actually go for the C1 Claudia, I would say that she is actually on par with the Nemesis, maybe even higher, because she is universal. However, at C0, at 0 stars, she is going to be at the same tier as Cobalt because of all of the reasons I've stated so far. Now, that's going to bring us to Tsubasa over here. Tsubasa is so freaking interesting, right? Because she is actually one of the best buffers in the game with what I just showed you. This 15% thing over here for 15 seconds stacks up to 3 times. As you get further and further along in her stars, she gets even more and more cracked. Because remember, my guys, we're talking about long term. This is the long term one, right? With the long vision ahead, sharp arrow stacked up to 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25% extra damage for 15 seconds. That sounds pretty freaking good to me, man. And so combined with the fact that she is actually a permanent character in the permanent pool, C6 is actually, you know, it's possible. But even at C1, with an extra 15% damage amplification for everybody, there is nobody else on this list that actually has that, aside from Claudia, right? But she is going to be limited. She's going to require her C1 for it. Same as Tsubasa. It's way more likely you're going to get Tsubasa's C1. And so it's for these reasons, primarily actually the damage buff, that Tsubasa is going to end up in the S tier. And if you manage to get her into 6 stars, she could actually go up into S plus tier. After all of this, we have kind of like, for me, the rest of the units, because it's really the S plus and the S tiers that have the main long staying power. And before I go on, let me convince you a little bit more with Tsubasa. I'm going to come back over to the guide here. Tsubasa over here. Tsubasa over here. Tsubasa over here, Tsubasa over here, and also Tsubasa over here as an ice DPS. I think that Tsubasa definitely deserves that ranking over at S, if not S+, because she could actually double up as the DPS as well. All right, coming down, we've got Samir in A tier. Now, this is an interesting one because, again, she does get outclassed, but I do think that if you did not pull her, because a lot of the time, it's actually quite unreasonable to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like pull every limited character, whatever. I think your Samir definitely can work with the Vault team. You got the Samir with the Nemesis, and then you can just grab either like your Claudia, Tsubasa, or the fabled Lin. And you'll see Lin, well, we'll talk about her very, very soon. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about her really, really quickly. Essentially, TLDR is that Lin is massive damage amplification. That is the TLDR for her. And so that is why she is so prevalent everywhere, because she is not like locked to a single element. She is useful for everybody. Same as Tsubasa, which is why, again, Tsubasa definitely deserves an S. Okay, but really back to the Samir. So you could skip this DPS weapon in favor of some of the other things like Lin, maybe Mark, maybe a Cobalt, etc, etc. I would prioritize these guys first, each of these guys, or each of like the Cobalt B, Claudia, Nemesis, and then I would think about getting another DPS weapon. All right, and so that's kind of like Samir for you. The next one is King, and King is at a B, potentially even C, because as you can see here, he's in the red, he's a niche option. Now, why exactly is he a niche option? First of all, whilst he is a DPS, he's not exactly the best DPS. The best DPS goes to Cobalt B. And the fact that Cobalt B has flame resonance, because of this, she is, I think, like giga value, and most of us are going to be pulling for Cobalt B. So there are a couple of different options here, right? We could have Cobalt B actually over here and then treat him as like the Shatterer, this shield breaker, and in that case, you could actually argue that he could come up to an A or an S. But in my opinion, I think Cobalt B is way more coveted. She's way more valuable, and so it's for that reason that King is going to be sitting in a B for me. And it's with this kind of logic where I can go through each of these characters and see that they are just unfortunately not really part of the meta. As you can see over here, Ice, we've got Merlin. Like, you're not going to really be using her sword for the DPS. The bow is going to be superior, and there is going to be more of a superior later on blade. And then we've got Shiro, who is primarily used for her shattering purposes. Unfortunately, there's a lot going on there, and etc, etc. You can use the same kind of logic for the rest of them. Coco, healer. My guys, there is no healers. There is just no healers. But the one thing I do need to address is the fan again, Lin. Now, if I click into Lin and I show you these values, Shatter 11.5, Charge 11.5. She could actually single-handedly put all of the Shatterers out of commission, and I think that is actually exactly what happened. And so yeah, that's essentially like all of the logic, all of the team building, the future team building, and all of the reasons as to why I put the tier list like this. This tier list could be relevant in 1 month, it could be relevant in 3 months, it could be relevant in 6 months or 12 months. You know, I see Tsubasa over there, and there are some people who like to play for the long game. If you want to play for the long game, it's going to be going for the Tsubasa 6 stars. I think that is actually the move. However, I'm not going to play for the long game. I'm not going to play for that. How I'm going to play is I'm going to play for this. I'm going to get as many characters as I can so I can have as much fun as I can. So after this tier list video, I'm pretty much telling you to ignore it. Because imagine this. You have 6 selectors and you decided to go with 6 Tsubasa dupes just so you can play for the long term, for the sharp arrows, for the 25% all damage buff. I don't know, man. I don't know about you, but I would freaking quit. That sounds freaking cringe to me. But this, based on all of the assumptions and the CN mechanics today, this is, for me, the long-term play. However, with that, that is going to conclude the video. Oh man, this is going to be a really long one. I hope you guys are okay with that. But now, you should be way more than equipped to be able to actually move these around on your own. So for example, if for some stupid reason, Samir one day gets buffed for the Vault resonance, then she could actually be rivaling Nemesis, but that puts Nemesis down here because now she actually has a competitor. And considering that the majority of the value of Nemesis is in the vault resonance, if Samir, for example, had the vault resonance, actually Samir is also a DPS. Boom, she's actually S+ now. Yeah, so I hope that the main takeaway is not the tier list, but the thinking behind the tier list. And with that, let's wrap this video up. Oh my god, I'm losing my voice. My guys, let me know how you feel about this tier list, how you feel about these tier lists, and how you feel about the logic that I used to come to these conclusions. Because like 100% of other content creators, I am not always going to be right. I am 100% going to make mistakes. Like, I've already made so many mistakes for Tower Fantasy. And so yeah, let me know down in the comments below. And if you do end up leaving a comment, well, thank you. If you did enjoy this video or found it kind of helpful, then please consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, or turning on that notification bell. However, as your girl Lynn once said, all good things must come to an end. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.